I've had a love, hate, and now back to love relationship with this camera. So I got the Sony FX3 back in December of 2021, and since then, it's honestly been a complete game changer to how I make videos. It has the best image quality of any camera that I've owned, and I've been able to work on so many different types of projects, and every time I see the footage, I'm just amazed at how good it looks. So the reason I love this camera is because it became the perfect workhorse for me as a filmmaker and content creator. And then in May of 2023, I got hired at a company where this camera became 10 times the workhorse, which is great because this camera definitely serves its purpose and it should be a workhorse. However, as I got busier and busier and busier, burnout hit. My urge to make stuff and just have fun with my dream camera was just completely gone. And I didn't really know how to deal with my burnout at the time, so I just kind of blamed it on the camera. I started to think, maybe if I get a different camera, I can go out and have fun and be inspired again. And I kind of started to nitpick every little thing that I didn't really like about this camera, so it started to make me hate the camera. For example, the menu system I just found kind of complicated and a little bit annoying, especially coming from my Pocket 4K that is just so simple and easy to use. And sometimes when I was color grading S-Log3 footage, I just felt like it just took a little bit of extra work to get to a point that I liked in the color grade, which honestly I just had to get a little bit better at color grading, which is something I didn't want to admit. And the main cause of this burnout was just the company that I was working for at the moment. And it had taken such a toll on my mental and physical health that in May of 2024, I finally decided to quit. And to celebrate quitting, I went to Disneyland with my fiance and sister. And I kid you not, within a week of quitting, I got back to making videos that I wanted to make, having fun with my dream camera, and that's where I'm at now. So let's get into the review. The first thing I really love about this camera is that it gives me complete freedom to evolve creatively and make whatever I want to make. I can make YouTube content, which is what I've been focusing on. I can film different ads, campaigns, or work with companies on product launches. I can make a film, I can capture memories, and I can even take photos. So this camera really is versatile enough to support whichever path I decide to take creatively. Now let's talk about the image quality. First and foremost, the dynamic range coming out of this camera is absolutely amazing. And in my opinion, it holds up well against every other big, chunky, expensive cinema camera at this point. Now the FX3 doesn't have internal RAW codecs, but I find that the files are still more than flexible enough even if I under or overexpose a little bit. And combining it with Dehancer Pro, I'm able to get some really nice filmic looks. And if you are interested in Dehancer, you can use my promo code VICTOR to get 10% off at the checkout. And because the camera sensor is only 12 megapixels, I find that the image doesn't look overly sharpened and overall it looks really pleasing. Now let's talk about autofocus. Now I've never owned a camera with good autofocus, so using the FX3 has made a huge difference to me, especially as a solo creator. For example, when I film these YouTube videos, or even if I'm just out filming a product launch or filming for fun, having good autofocus really just allows me to focus on the composition and the exposure in my shot. And just last week, the autofocus system amazed me even more because I filmed this quick example shot where I run in front of the camera, and within 2 to 3 frames, the camera somehow caught onto my leg that just appeared into the frame. And if your face is in the frame with your face and eye detection on, it's pretty much glued to your eye the whole time. The low light is really good. It can see in the dark. I have no further notes. One thing I sometimes take for granted is the fact that the Sony FX3 has internal fans. So it's going on 3 years that I've owned this camera and I've shot with it in every single scenario you can think of, but I've never had any overheating issues. If you need to film for hours straight, and if it's in direct sunlight or hot weather, then you'll definitely want to spend the extra money and get the FX3. Another thing I really love about the FX3 is just how small the file sizes are. Because I've been focusing more on making YouTube content, I have to film a lot of talking head videos. So thankfully I found that when shooting an XAVC-S, the file sizes are a little bit less than a gigabyte per minute. So having a small yet still flexible enough file is actually really important to me. And if you're planning on filming long interviews, mini docs, or like wedding ceremonies again, I definitely think the FX3's file sizes are perfect for that. Lastly, uncropped 4K 60. That should really be a much more common feature in cameras, especially in 2024. However, it's still not. And I don't shoot 4K 60 all the time. However, it is nice to know that if I do need a slow-mo shot, I can put it in 60 and I'll still have the same framing. The FX3 for photos is more than enough, and I've used it both for fun and for some jobs, and it really impressed me for photos. And initially, I was hoping that they would just take the photo mode out of this camera because I just wanted to use it for video. However, in the few situations where I have needed to take photos, that is very helpful. And now for what I don't like. Issue number one is that there is still no shutter angle yet. Okay, so as I was working on the review, Sony released a firmware update that did add shutter angle. However, people were having issues with it, so they ended up taking down the update. So as of right now, we still don't have shutter angle. So that's a bit of a bummer, but it is nice to know that it's coming soon. Another thing I don't like is the included Sony FX3 top handle. Now, as of this point, I don't ever use microphones that have XLR inputs, so I don't find the top handle an absolute need. I just wish it was optional to pay for. For example, on the Sony FX30, which is an FX3 with a smaller APS-C sensor, you can buy the camera alone for a couple $100 cheaper, or if you do want the XLR handle, you can pay an extra couple $100 for it. Next up, it's a super minor nitpick, but I hate that whenever you go to playback footage, the little thumbnail looks all pixelated and the user interface just looks very dated in my opinion. And my last issue isn't necessarily my camera itself, but just the price. And not that I think the camera is overpriced at $3,700. I think the camera is actually a really great price for everything that you get. And if video is your job and the way you make a living, I think it's 100% worth it. However, it's at a price point that I don't find it easily replaceable, if that makes sense. For example, sometimes when I go on trips or vacations, I do want to take this camera with me because it is a small enough and compact camera to bring on a vacation. However, because it is $3,700 and because this is my means of an income and this is how I make a living, I just don't want to risk damaging it or losing it, so I just won't bring it on a trip. But I am planning on picking up a Sony a7C II in the future. That's a camera that I could feel comfortable taking on trips and also just using as a B cam to my FX3. So overall, I have really grown to love the Sony FX3. I think it's such an amazing, versatile little compact cinema camera. And if you are planning on picking up the Sony FX3, you can use my affiliate link in the description, and that's just a great way to get some gear that you want and also help support the channel. And lastly, I just want to say a huge thank you to my amazing fiance for her continued support on my creative journey and my career. I was absolutely burnt out at that company, but I will say quitting my full-time job was an absolute privilege and I couldn't have done it without her support. Without her, there would be no YouTube videos like these. So I just want to say a huge thank you to her. And yeah, that is all for this video. I'll see you in the next one.